I want to talk about needs today. So, we all have needs. Most of them are unconscious. Most of them stem back to when we were little children and we didn't have some of our needs met. And of course, not 100% of our needs can be met by our parents because they have their own needs and their own humanity. And it's, being a parent myself, it's impossible to give 100% of my child's needs. I can meet them as best as I can, but it's hard enough to meet our own needs sometimes. So needs are something that we most definitely need to make conscious, because if they're not conscious, they're going to be running us in unhealthy ways. And we have this unconscious or conscious expectation that others have to fulfill them for us because we're still coming from the perspective of the child versus the adult, and the adult that knows how to take care of our needs. But it's impossible to take care of our needs if we do not know what they are. So let's dive into the world of needs. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So I'm trying to think of where to begin because it's such a complex topic. There are so many different layers to it. And of course, there's our fundamental needs for survival, right? That we have food and we have shelter. But what I want to look at primarily is our emotional needs. And it's going to be unique for everyone. I always like to kind of look at it from the perspective of the Enneagram as well. And within the Enneagram, if you understand your Enneagram type and your subtype, your needs are going to be slightly different and unique to you according to where you're coming from, where your instincts are coming from. But we all have our version of emotional needs. Now, depending on our quote unquote wounding, our belief systems, what we believe about ourselves or about life or love or others, relationship, our needs are going to be tinted by that, right? They're going to be affected by all of those things. So this is why I say it's so complex and it's so unique and individual. But I think at the core of it, we ultimately have, I think we all share a fundamental need for love, acceptance, to be seen, heard, and understood, and to be respected. So these are kind of the basic emotional needs. So let's begin with not knowing what your needs are. Because I've had that. I've had many clients say, well, I don't know what my needs are. But a good way to start is, if you don't know what your needs are, look at what your pattern of behavior is in relationship. Where do you go to when you get triggered? How do you react? How do you respond? So let's say, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say your partner isn't communicating with you in a way that you would like. Let's say they're not as forthcoming as you'd like. You'd like for them to be more detailed or be more specific. And when they don't communicate with you, it might trigger you into a state of anxiety or maybe even anger, because what's underneath that is fear. And maybe the fear could be, the belief could be, I'm abandoned. And so if they're not communicating, it sets up an anxiety of what are they doing? It might create, go into a story of, I don't trust because I'm abandoned. Underneath that might be, I'm abandoned because I'm not lovable. So you see how you can just go down the rabbit hole. And really, what the communication is actually reflecting is a need for presence or a need for a certain kind of validation or a need for safety. or a need for connection, that I trust that you're not going to leave me. So do you see what I mean? You have to kind of go through the various levels, and it always is a great place to start is, what is your behavior showing you? And your behavior you have to move through the fear, because what we're afraid of is rubbing up against the fundamental need that wasn't met when we were younger. And again, your personal unique story is going to offer you your own need, and we can definitely have similarities, but what triggers that need might be very, very unique to you. And this is why when we're in a couple, in relationship, it's so good early on. But if you didn't do it early on, it's still okay to do it now. There's never, you can always begin again. There's never a late moment. Is you really talk about these things. You make them conscious. You share them with your partner. This is what triggers me. This is what happens when I get triggered. This is what happens when I get scared. My biggest fear is, so when you do that, that's what this triggers in me. And this is what I'm needing so that I don't have to go into that place of, getting triggered. However, first and foremost, it really is our responsibility. And so, as I said in the beginning, if our needs aren't conscious, we will expect the other to fulfill them all the time. And we'll also expect that the other should intuitively know what our needs are, because in essence, that's what it's not conscious or manipulative, but as children, we would imagine or expect that our parents should intuitively know exactly what we need. The funny thing is, the interesting thing is that, as a parent, your baby, in the beginning, there is no verbal communication. And we've moved into a heavily verbal, communicative, sometimes we don't do it so well, but we are in a culture that really relies on words. And that might sound funny. You might go, well, yeah, duh, of course. But I think we are actually far more intuitive beings that have just been really disconnected from that. And so the process of having a child, but also if you have an animal, that's another really good example, because you're not using spoken word, right? In a particular language, you are creating an intuitive language, which is much more based on emotions, actually, and energy. So whether it's your child or your pet, what are you intuiting? Now, obviously, both babies, children, and animals learn to communicate. I'm hungry. I'm tired. I want to go outside. I want to play. I want to sleep. I need to go to the bathroom, right? But it's like all of this is a kind of intuitive, right brain way of communicating, because it isn't just tell me what you need. And the ironic thing is that even when we do have words, if we don't understand our emotional body and the language of our emotional body, it's actually really hard to even put into words and communicate, how are you feeling? What are you needing in that moment? So as you've heard me talk about in the past, it's really important to understand the language of our body, the language of our emotions. And the only way to do that is you have to sit and get to know them. You have to stay with your emotions as they arise and go, okay, this anger is here. Okay, that might make me feel really uncomfortable. What is it trying to tell me? What do I have to learn about this? Okay, I feel sad. What is the sadness expressing? What is it showing me? What can I learn from it? And so no matter what you're experiencing, that you stay present with it and you tune into it and you learn from it. We've got to get out of this pattern of berating ourselves or judging ourselves for having feelings and emotions that are just human, that are actually messengers and a language unto themselves that can give us such a great map to understand who we are as individuals. And the more you can do that and you can build up that language, and then the need is always underneath all the emotions. Or sometimes we might react. Remember, you've probably heard me say this many times over if you follow me. When we're in unconscious behavior, we're reactive. We react, we snap, we get angry, we get frustrated, we get scared, we get anxious, we get panicked, it's a very reactive behavior towards the other person. When we consciously choose our behavior, which is a skill and takes practice, then we can choose to respond. Responding is consciously showing up in whatever the dynamic or the experience is. When we can consciously choose to respond, that's when we have already done began the work of, okay, I understand what my triggers are. I know what scares me. Like when you do those things, I know that that's going to trigger me. Okay, so what is my responsibility? My responsibility is to understand that when I get triggered, how am I feeling? What are the emotions that it's rubbing up against? What are they telling me? And what am I really needing underneath it all? So most of us, when you go down that, when you peel all the layers back, you go down that rabbit hole, there's going to be many needs, but there's going to be one fundamental need. Now, I remember studying this when I was in my 20s, that our three fundamental needs are lovability or likability, competence, and significance. Am I lovable enough? Am I smart enough? Am I important enough? Do I matter? And we have all three, but you'll lean more towards one as being more important to you. And so this is kind of a little bit more of a technical, logical way of looking at it, but you could strip it down to which one of those do you feel is the most prominent need? And so then you can kind of work up from that, is recognizing if, let's say, significance is the most important thing to me. If somebody, let's say, you go to a party and you think that someone is ignoring you, they might not actually be ignoring you. They might be just, a social butterfly and doing the rounds and they haven't come to you yet, or God knows what's going on for them. They could have a headache. They could have had a bad day. Their pet could have died the day before. Who knows, right? But let's say my basic need was I need to feel significant. I could go into the story of they're ignoring me and it's making me angry because by their ignoring me, I don't feel important. I don't feel like I matter. Now that sounds potentially really narcissistic, but the point is that when we go back to being children, it's like the absence of somebody's presence, which is normally what we fundamentally need, is we need presence from our caretakers, because within presence, there's the I'm here for you. You're not alone. I love you. I accept you. Everything's going to be okay. You're safe. I'm here protecting you, holding you, taking care of you, making sure your fundamental needs are met for survival. Do you see, like, all of this can be held in the container of presence? And we can't be present 100% of the time. It's damn hard because, like I said, it's hard to do it for ourselves. Sometimes we get overwhelmed, we get stressed, we're tired, we have our own needs that we're hungry, we're complex beings, right? But without presence, we can go into the story of I must not matter. I must not be important enough for my parent to show me their presence, or I must not be lovable enough. Something must be wrong with me for my parent to be present. Or, depending on the way that they speak to me, maybe I'm stupid. Maybe they think I'm stupid. I'm not smart enough to be loved. I'm not smart enough to be important enough for them to really be present for me. So whatever angle we're coming from, presence is so fundamentally important. So let's fast forward a little bit, and let's say you're on this journey of kind of understanding what your language is, your unique language of your emotions, your feelings, your experience. What are your triggers? What are your fears? What are your wounds? And you're kind of starting to understand a little bit what your needs are. then it's like, how do we fulfill our own needs? Because of course the unconscious pattern is going to be to expect that our partner or sometimes our friends or our family should fulfill them for us, right? If you're in that place still, then your inner child needs your loving attention. Now, it's not to say that even once we do this work and we make it conscious that we still don't have needs from our partners. That's absolutely fine to have a need, right? But the difference is that the first point, just like with emotions and with triggers, we have to take care of ourselves first. Because otherwise we create codependency or we create a kind of expectation and nobody can make it 100% better. Can they support us? Can they love us through it? Can they give us their presence within our experience? Absolutely. Do they help? Yes. But if we go in consciously or unconsciously expecting you need to fulfill this for me in order for me to have peace within myself, that's a tricky path. Now, if we're in a relationship where that person just does not have the capacity to even meet some of our needs, to meet us at the table, as I like to say, if they don't have the capacity, the maturity, the awareness, the consciousness, you might have to go, okay, I can fulfill my own needs, but is it healthy for me to be in this relationship where just none of my needs are going to be even remotely met? I'd say that unless that person is willing to go to therapy and do the work on themselves and with you, not much is going to change. Because if somebody's not willing to go in and do that work, we just repeat patterns again and again because everything is unconsciously showing up in our human dynamics. And I want to, just on a side note, that needs are very different than neediness. Neediness comes when we are behaving unconsciously and we're not taking care of our own needs. We're not conscious of even what they are. And we're still coming from a place of wounding and from fear and from anxiety. And there's no judgment within this. There's absolutely no judgment. It's just showing us, it's indicating that we are still really coming from a much smaller part of us that's really afraid. And the neediness is the grasping towards, please make me feel better, love me, want me, make me feel important, make me feel safe, but it's coming from that graspiness. And so neediness is often when we actually don't even know what our needs are. And it's coming from the child, whereas the adult can say, okay, I have a need for affection in order to feel close to you. I have a need for clear, conscious, transparent, kind communication in order to feel safe. I have a need to spend quality time together. Then we can go into our love languages. But when we understand what is it that I need in order to feel connected and safe and fulfilled and happy and be in my joy, and we understand how to really honor those needs and take care of them within ourselves, then we can, from a very mature adult place, ask our partner, or express to them, this is my need. Would you be willing? Could we do this? Could we make time for this? Or in this situation, could you communicate with me in this way? Or then there's the, somebody was saying that relationship is like constant negotiation. And I don't really like that word because it sounds like a lot of tedious work. But I think being in relationship is about being in a constant conversation. I think that's what it is inside of us as well. It's like doing this work is really about learning how to have a healthy, supportive, nurturing, kind, compassionate, constructive conversation with ourselves and the various parts within us. But do you see how when you have an understanding of your internal world and your internal dialogue, then you can express what you need in a relationship. You can't demand it. You can't expect it from them, but you can communicate. You can ask. You can quote unquote negotiate. Because also two people are going to have two different needs, remember? Or several different needs. And so then the quote unquote negotiation is, how do you support each other? How do you support each other's needs? It's not always about fulfilling them, sometimes, but also sometimes in a relationship, you're like, you know what? I don't have the energy to fulfill your need right now. And that's the honest truth. And so that's why it's really important to go, okay, how do I take care of my needs? So when I feel insecure and I'm needing validation, okay, that's an invitation for me to give myself validation. Now, some people will go, well, if I don't know what that is, how do I give that to myself? And I'll say two things to that. One is, as I've said with love, I think I said this last week, you have to know what something is if you know it's missing. So just think of that. The second thing is imagine receiving it. So if your need is for validation in that moment, then you can close your eyes and you can imagine, okay, what does it feel to be validated? And even if you're beginning from the outside in, eventually what you want to get to is giving it to yourself from within yourself. But imagine, what would it feel like to feel validated? Oh, it makes me feel warm. My solar plexus can relax. I feel safe. I feel like I'm expansive. I feel grounded. I feel secure. Whatever it is, whatever the emotions, the sensations, even the visuals of how you look and feel when you receive validation. It's just a feeling. So this is another kind of key point, is what needs are. Is there a need for a feeling, an experience that we're looking for inside of ourselves? And what's really cool about that is we can create needs that are dependent on the external. I need you to do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and then my need will be fulfilled. But actually, it's a feeling. So if somebody, this is where love language is important to know, because sometimes we go, well, I have the need to feel loved. Somebody's like, well, I buy you gifts all the time. And you're like, yeah, but that's not my love language. Like, thank you, that's really kind, but actually I just need a hug. I need a cuddle on the couch. That's how I receive love, is through touch. So what we're looking for is an experience that is going to evoke a feeling within us. So the cool thing about that is that you get to give that to yourself in any moment, in any place. And even though, yes, it's a beautiful thing to receive from someone else outside of us that we love and that is really important to us, have that been like our mother or our father or our partner in our current day life, you can still give that feeling to yourself, because that's what the need is craving. It's craving the feeling of love, of acceptance, of acknowledgement, of importance, of worthiness, whatever it is. It's a feeling. Needs are just saying, hey, I need this feeling right now. Again, the unconscious trigger, knee-jerk reaction is, I need this feeling right now and I need you to give it to me. Because of course, as children, we don't know how to self-soothe. It's impossible and it's ridiculous. Any parenting book that's like, leave the child alone to cry and they'll learn to self-soothe. No. We learn through attachment. We learn through healthy attachment, through connection, through relating, through presence. So whatever we didn't get when we were a child, and again, that's a whole process sometimes to just forgive our parents for being human. And you might have to go through the process of being angry or being really sad. Or, there's that simultaneous, I love them, but I hate them. I love them, but I'm angry. I love them, but they didn't give me what I needed. And you go through that process. That is a journey of healing in and of itself. And we come to a place of compassion and understanding and not taking it personal. This is such a big part of the inner work and the inner journey, is learning to not take things personal and removing the judgment. So whatever it is that you feel like you need from the external, going, okay, how do I learn to give that to myself? And just what is the feeling? If I were to receive it, how would I feel? And so that when you get into that trigger and you feel that need coming up, like you're aware of it now, you've made it conscious, then the next step is go to giving yourself that feeling in that moment as best as you can. When we do this, sometimes like on a daily basis, and this is a process that you'll take till the end of your days here. We are this is an ongoing relationship. And like I said at the beginning, all relationships are an ongoing conversation. They take effort. There's no going on autopilot. Does all of this begin to feel more like second nature? Yes, because you'll have the tools, you'll have the language, you'll have the understanding. But will you still get triggered? Will you still have needs? Will you still get scared? Will you still get... Yeah, sure, of course, you're human. That's okay. That's a thing too. It's like sometimes people go, oh God, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm like, well, where are you trying to get to? Like, we're trying to get to a greater place of peace. But that comes by just showing up for ourselves every single day. But you're not going to arrive to a place that's like all of a sudden everything is perfect and you're always happy and you're always fine and your relationship is always perfect and always fine. That's like the Disney happily ever after. Like, they cut the story off there because that's when the story actually really begins. And that's when the work and the effort comes in, right? So yeah, just remembering that you're human and it's totally okay. It's all really okay. This is about learning, how do we take care of ourselves? And the more we learn how to take care of ourselves, the more that we can truly know how to take care of the people that we love without trying to work out our traumas and our wounding and our triggers and our, sometimes really bad behavior. I don't like using that word, but sometimes we can show up super shitty in dynamics. But it's recognizing there's always a reason for our behavior. So if you're showing up in a quote unquote really uncontrollable way, let that be a point of pause and reflection where you can go, okay, where's this coming from? And then you start to go through the layers and you go back to the basic need. And like I said, some relationships, then we can go into kind of attachment styles, which I don't like to get too concrete about because I think we can go into, we might land in one more specifically. But again, I think we depending on the situation, I've seen secure people become very anxiously attached because they were with someone that really triggered that within them. So again, the first point is, how do I take care of myself? But if you're taking care of yourself and that person is still triggering the shit out of you, or just not even triggering you, but just putting you in a place where you do not feel safe in that relationship, then probably the best decision is to remove yourself from that situation. Because we also don't want to go into the reformer or the savior or the I can change them, or, we all have our own individual journey. And the best relationship is an interdependent relationship where we can support each other's growth. We can support each other's healing. But we're not expecting the other to do the work for us and to fix it and make it better for us. It's having that love and that helping hand that it's like, I'm here with you. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, nobody can do it for us. Nobody. Not even a therapist. Why? Because it's an internal experience. It's an internal feeling. And often to really understand that feeling, it takes practice. Some people, when I'm working with them, they want to just get it like that. Well, I don't feel that. Well, it's not going to happen overnight because you've had maybe 3-4 decades of being in the habit of having a certain kind of pattern, a certain kind of emotion attached, a certain kind of sensation in your body, a certain story, a certain belief, like decades of being used to that. And so how can you expect yourself to change it in one night, in one moment, in one session? It's not going to happen because you have to undo before you can redo, right? But it's not to say it's not possible, but we just have to be patient. We have to be patient. And the way that the change and the evolution occurs is simply in the way that we show up for ourselves with presence? Are we paying attention? Are we asking ourselves, how are you? How am I feeling? Why are you feeling that way? How can I support you? What do you need? How can I give you that need as best as I can? I'm here for you. You're not alone. I love you. And it's not just the words, right? It's the energy. It's the feeling in your body. I will say it so many times. And I know that for some, that's a stretch to get there. Because again, we live in a very mental society. And some of us are in different triads, instinctual, intellectual, or emotional. Heart, gut, head, right? We have all three, but we tend to land in one. And the whole point of doing this work is that we balance and bring into harmony those three centers of intelligence. So the invitation for you today is just to start to recognize, what is my behavior? How am I reacting in my behavior? What are the emotions and the feelings? And get to know them. Inquire. What are they telling me? What are they showing me? Where are they directing me towards? What's underneath that? What am I scared of? What is the belief in here? What am I really needing at the core of it? And what would it feel like if that need were fulfilled? And then you go to the embodiment of it. So that's the pathway. Again, if you're new at this, I'd really recommend having a session, whether it's with me or someone else that you resonate more with. But the guidance can be really helpful. And it's not about being told what to do, because then that can just, sometimes we replicate the same kind of parent-child dynamic, which is sometimes if we just stay in the analyzation of something, that's what can happen, is we don't get out of that loop. But just sometimes having someone hold the space for us and to show us our blind spots, or have us be able to just like tilt our head a little bit in a different direction, go, oh, I can see it from a different angle now. And ultimately, someone to guide you into learning how to have compassion for all of you, all of what you're feeling and experiencing. So that's the invitation. Have patience, be kind, be gentle. You can always begin again. There's no rush, there's no right or wrong. But just begin to have the conversation with yourself, and you can meditate on it, you can journal it, you can have a conversation with your partner, with your friends, but just bringing all of this into awareness. Remember, that's where I always begin. That's where the alphabet begins, A for awareness. So I'll leave it at that for today. As always, take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.